So, Universal Orlando just announced its next attraction. And of course, everyone has something to say about it. Including me. Now, to be fair, I, along with many others, have been pretty generous with Universal over the last few years. And I won't exclude myself from that. That generosity came mostly from seeing a clear course correction and a genuine effort to turn Epic Universe into something closer to a work of art. I mean, if you ignore Curse of the Werewolf.
That is one big pile of shit.
But there's a growing problem that keeps popping up, even during this so-called golden age leading into Epic Universe. And that problem is Universal's complete lack of basic standards when it comes to ambience, sightlines, and world building in their legacy parks. Over the past few years, Universal seems to have mostly given up on those fundamentals, except when it comes to the Wizarding World in Orlando. And even then, they've managed to mess it up in places like Japan and Hollywood, where sightline issues have already compromised the illusion. A perfect example? The new Fast and Furious coaster in Hollywood. That massive show building has absolutely destroyed the ambience of Hogsmeade if you're standing near the land's exit. A giant brick box with a coaster logo slapped right in front of the Wizarding World arch. It's ugly, it's intrusive, and it completely breaks the fantasy. Now, in Orlando, the problem is slightly different. I don't think sightlines will be the main issue here. In fact, credit where it's due, painting the coaster supports sky blue was a smart move. It's far less industrial and visually aggressive than something like Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket. But the real issue isn't the color. It's the placement. Back when Universal decided to transform Production Central into Minion Land, a lot of people immediately pointed out the problem. The area completely lost its thematic logic. Suddenly, you had massive studio-style warehouses standing in for what's supposed to be the world of Despicable Me. Then Rip Ride Rocket somehow became part of the New York area of the park, despite being set in Hollywood, and literally having Hollywood in its name. And now, we're doing it again.
Retarded!
Here's the core issue. This new attraction is explicitly set in Hollywood. That fact is baked into the brand. It's baked into the name. And yet, Universal is building it in the New York section of the park. Once again, the park's internal logic is being sacrificed for convenience. Predictably, the usual crowd, the people whose only standard is new thing exists, therefore good, are already bending over backwards to explain why this doesn't matter, why theme doesn't matter, why cohesion doesn't matter, why world building is overrated.
Don't ask questions, just consume product and then get excited for next products.
So, let's break that down. And let's explain exactly why this does matter, and why decisions like this are the reason Universal still struggles to reach true creative excellence outside of very specific areas. First excuse, it's just a ride. Theme doesn't matter. This is probably the dumbest argument, and also the most common. Theme absolutely matters. In fact, theme is the entire point of a theme park. If theme didn't matter, Universal could just build a Six Flags-style parking lot full of coasters and call it a day. But that's not what Universal sells, and it's not what guests pay for. Universal Studios Florida was designed as a studio park, a collection of distinct places, each with its own identity, logic, and visual language. New York looks like New York for a reason. Hollywood looks like Hollywood for a reason. When you start dropping attractions wherever there's space, ignoring setting, tone, and internal logic, the park stops feeling like a world and starts feeling like a shopping mall with rides. And this is where defenders always move the goalposts. They'll say, well, guests don't care. Well, most people won't even notice. Well, kids won't think about it. That's not a defense. That's an admission of lowered standards. People might not consciously point it out, but they absolutely feel it. That subtle sense that something is off, that the park doesn't flow, that areas feel random and disconnected. That's how you kill immersion without people realizing why. Universal understood this once. They built entire lands around coherence and sightlines, not convenience. That's why Wizarding World works so well when it's done right. So no, this isn't just a ride. It's another example of Universal choosing speed and IP placement over world building. And when a company starts treating theme as optional, mediocrity becomes inevitable. Second excuse, Disney does the same thing. This one always comes up. And yes, Disney does do it too. But here's the part people conveniently ignore. Disney doing something wrong doesn't magically make it okay when Universal does it. If anything, Universal used to be the company that mocked Disney for this kind of lazy thinking. Universal built its identity on being sharper, bolder, and more intentional, especially in the post-Wizarding World era. They were the ones saying, look, we actually care about immersion. So copying Disney's worst habits isn't a flex. It's a downgrade.
You have become the very thing you swore to destroy.
And there's a huge difference between isolated compromises and systemic carelessness. Disney's problem right now is over-reliance on IP and constant retrofits. Universal's growing problem is placing attractions wherever they fit, regardless of thematic logic. When you put a Hollywood-based attraction in New York, when you turn Production Central into Minion Land without fixing the architecture, when Rip Ride Rocket becomes a permanent eyesore in what's supposed to be a period-accurate city, that's not a one-off mistake, that's a pattern. And patterns matter, because once guests stop trusting the park's internal logic, the magic collapses. Not in one big dramatic moment, but slowly, quietly, and permanently. Universal doesn't need to copy Disney's current playbook. Disney is struggling because of that playbook. The reason people were excited about Epic Universe in the first place was because it looked like Universal remembered something Disney forgot, that worlds matter more than IP logos. Third excuse, you're just nitpicking. It's not that deep. This is the laziest defense of all, and also the most revealing. Calling criticism nitpicking is just a way to avoid engaging with the argument. It's not a rebuttal. It's a dismissal. Because here's the truth. Theme parks are built entirely on details, ambience, sightlines, architecture, music, transitions. Take enough of those away, and what you're left with isn't a themed environment. It's a collection of rides with branding slapped on top. And this idea that it's not that deep completely ignores how human perception actually works. Most guests won't stop and say, ah yes, the internal thematic logic of this park has been compromised. But they will feel that something is off, that the park doesn't flow, that areas blur together, that the experience feels flatter than it used to. That's not nitpicking. That's design psychology. Every great theme park understands this. Disney used to. Universal absolutely did. This is why places like Animal Kingdom work so well when they're done right. Not because of the rides alone, but because everything supports the illusion. When Universal ignores placement, setting, and visual storytelling, they're chipping away at that illusion piece by piece. And here's the uncomfortable part. If you excuse this stuff long enough, it becomes the standard. And eventually, the park becomes even more creatively incoherent. That's how mediocrity wins. Not through one bad decision, but through 1,000 small ones people were told not to care about. Fourth excuse. At least the ride will be fun. This one sounds reasonable at first. But it completely misses the point. Yes, the ride might be fun. A coaster doing coaster things usually is. But if fun is the only standard, then why are we even talking about theme parks anymore?
You don't think! You never figured out how to think!
By that logic, nothing else matters. Not setting, not story, not cohesion, not immersion. And that's how you end up with parks that feel disposable. Theme parks aren't just ride delivery systems. They're experiences. They're worlds. They're supposed to feel intentional. Like every piece belongs where it is. Universal already knows this. They've proven it. No one goes to Hogsmeade and says, well, at least the rides are fun. They talk about how it feels to be there. Because when a park is done right, the ride isn't carrying the land elevates the ride. And here's the real danger of this mindset. Once you accept the ride will save it, everything else becomes optional. World building becomes decoration. Ambience becomes background noise. Sightlines become an afterthought. That's not how you build something timeless. That's how you build something people forget 5 years later. A fun ride in the wrong place is still a failure of design. Because if Universal keeps treating placement and theme as negotiable, they're not just lowering standards for this coaster, they're lowering standards for the entire park. So with all that said, let me be very clear about something before anyone twists what I am saying. I have nothing against Fast and Furious being represented in the park. The IP itself isn't the problem. The problem is the lazy execution. This isn't about gatekeeping, it's about standards. With just a few small adjustments, this could have worked. Make the ride a mission set in New York. Lean into the setting that already exists. Rewrite the premise so the attraction actually belongs where it's being built. That alone would solve half the issue. But instead, Universal chose the easiest path, not the best one. And this isn't an isolated case. We've already seen this mindset before. Take Velocicoaster. It's an incredible ride, one of the best coasters ever built. But imagine how much stronger it could have been with real animatronic moments instead of static statues, Jurassic Park theme, not Jurassic World, to match river adventure in the whole area, a proper finale instead of just ending. They built an elite ride system, and then stopped short of greatness. That's the pattern. Universal isn't failing because they can't build great rides. They absolutely can. They're failing because they keep settling for good enough when they're inches away from something special. And when you see that same attitude show up again with this Fast and Furious coaster, wrong setting, compromised world building, and minimal effort to make it belong, it's hard not to call it what it is. Peak mediocrity. Not because it's terrible, but because it could have been so much more. And that's what makes it frustrating. So if you're tired of being told that good enough is all we should expect, hit that like button. Drop a comment and tell me, do you agree with this placement, or is Universal settling for mediocrity again? And if you care about theme parks being more than just ride containers, subscribe. Because we're not here to consume product and move on. We're here to demand better.